let me start by welcoming our resident commissioner, our Congressman, Pablo Jose Hernandez, who's also a dear friend. And I think that I've presented myself and said hello to everybody. But if not, I'm Ramon Barguin. I'm the chairman of the board of directors. And I'm very glad because when Maristani called me and said, let me put this conversation to push economic development, I said, well, we could do it at Atlantic University because we're supposed to be providing adequate solutions to everyday problems. And what everyday problem than broadband? So needless to say, today I wear my hat not of the Chamber of Commerce, but I wear my hat of Atlantic University, and it is my pleasure again to have you here.
Good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing? I'm super pumped. This is one of the things that I think it's kind of like a dream of mine. And it's not a dream because it's a reality. In Puerto Rico, we have digital economic development. The thing is that all of us are doing things in our own, little scenarios, and we don't share with each other. And when Laura invited us to be a part of this as a sponsor organization, I said right away, yes, please, let's do this. We need to talk to each other, and that's the reason why we're here today. Thank you to the resident commissioner for joining us today. I know he has a very important role in promoting economic development and it's part of his main agenda in Congress, so I really thank you for being here. I also want to recognize specifically Mrs. Lucy Crespo. I'm a fan, so Mrs. Crespo, I think, has taken the lead of doing this digital economic development in Puerto Rico for a long time now, and she'll talk to us about it a little bit more in a bit. And I would also like to recognize Antonio Ramos Guardiola, our CIO. Thank you so much for being here. You, of course, everybody here is very important, and we're going to hear from each of you in a few minutes. I think that's about it. We're going to have a few sections. Laura, it's going to be help me MC, and Lorena Molina from the Census is going to help us moderate. If any of you need the agenda, we have a QR code back there. We have the Wi-Fi connection information back there. Any questions?
I'm only here because I have seen during the last 3 years that Puerto Rico's economic development strategy has already been built, and that many of the groups in this room are making it happen. So as I see a lot of new leadership coming in, and obviously with the desire not only in DC but in Puerto Rico to figure out how to continue to amplify a lot of these efforts, that it was important for everybody to get together and be able to see each other's faces, and for the congressmen and the other teams that represent government to once again see the faces of the people that are making it happen. This conversation today is just the beginning. Obviously, there are a lot of verticals that we're touching here, but I think that the general thread is that there is, and rightly so, a big focus on building out infrastructure and making sure that people have affordable connectivity, but that there has to be a conversation in any conversation around economic development about what happens around that infrastructure. And that's making sure that Puerto Ricans understand how to leverage and use the internet for its maximum potential. And again, that's going to be through workforce development, it's going to be through entrepreneurship, it's going to be through small business development, and that's the room that we're trying to build today. We only have a little bit of time, so we're going to try to sort of moderate the conversation. Not all of us will get to necessarily speak at this meeting, but the goal is that we are able to sort of leave the room with follow-up, with other conversations that we're going to plan to have, and with specific recommendations also for the congressmen and other teams on what would be helpful from their roles moving forward.
Thank you. And again, Lorena Molina with the Census Bureau. Have been working in the intersection of all things driving economic growth and in the digital space. And certainly for those who know me, all about data. So definitely want that to come out through the conversation, because we're thinking about not only the intersection of, like Laura said, the infrastructure that is being built in Puerto Rico and the investment that it's happening, but everybody here around the table has a different vantage point and a different point of view that I think should be shared in a broader space. And I think we're in a unique positioning right now with the opportunities in front of us in the next several years to actually accelerate the efforts that have been ongoing thus far. And a lot of that through the workforce lens, but also thinking about the skill set of the future. So with that, we want to go around the room very, very quickly. It's a lot of people and we don't have a lot of time. So name your role and organization, and then we can kick off the conversation. So we'll start over here.
Morning, Dr. Fernanda Roman. I'm in charge of here at Atlantic University of the program of distance education.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mercedes Quintero. I am the BEAD Federal Program Officer for both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Hello all, my name is Dominique Gilormini. I'm the Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Education Initiative.
Hello everyone, my name is Sergio Clo. I'm the head of Latin America and US for Forte Global.
Buenos días, Isabel Rullán, directora ejecutiva Comprometidos.
Good morning, everyone. Edgar Cruz, Executive Director of Evolving Space and MBA candidate from University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez.
Good morning, everyone. Lauren Casio, founding partner at Gulp Data. Gulp Data is a global leader in the data economy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Selena Suarez. I'm a board member at Black Girls Code, and I work to build technical innovation programs across the U.S. to help underrepresented people break into tech careers.
Hi, my name is Christina Mancini. I'm the CEO of Black Girls Code. Black Girls Code is a nonprofit focused on ensuring that our communities understand that technology is for them.
Morning, my name is Janaisha Perez Padilla. I'm the general manager of Ironhack, a global tech education company.
Buenos días, Maximiliano Trujillo, Chief of Staff, Comisionado Residente de Puerto Rico.
Buenos días, Pablo José Hernández, Resident Commissioner of Puerto Rico in Washington.
Good morning, Julio Abreu, Economic Development for the City of Guaynabo. And in my name and the name of our Mayor, Edward O'Neill, we all want to thank you and welcome the city.
Buenos días, good morning. I'm Alfredo Calderon. I'm the Vice President of the Puerto Rico Internet Society chapter.
Good morning, my name is DJ Lampett. I'm the VP of Small Business Development for the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce and Strategic Initiatives as well.
Good morning, my name is Paul Weinstein. I'm a director of Puerto Rico Blockchain Trade Association. We're a nonprofit group that promotes entrepreneurship and technology advocacy.
Good morning, my name is Ubaldo Cordova. I'm a professor of chemical engineering at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, a board member of the Puerto Rico Science Trust, and CEO of Acerola Strategies, that is a firm that specializes in complexity management.
Buenos días, soy Denise Rodriguez, Executive Director at Culmina 66. It's a program of the Science Trust. We're the entrepreneurship ecosystem builder, connecting entrepreneurs to the resources that they need.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Camila Calderon. I'm the Deputy Director of the Puerto Rico Broadband Program.
Good morning, Hector Girao, Executive Director of Parallel 18, part of the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust.
Buenos días, Michelle Cavilla, Directora Ejecutiva del Programa de Banda Ancha.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Antonio Ramos, Chief Innovation and Information Officer for the Government of Puerto Rico.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lucy Crespo. I lead the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust, a non-for-profit organization created by law in 2004 with the mission to invest, facilitate, and build the capacity needed to advance Puerto Rico economy and the well-being of its citizens through innovation-driven enterprise, science, technology, and public health.
Oh, and I should introduce myself. I gave it for granted that everybody knew I shouldn't have done that. I'm Dr. Zayera Jordan. I am the president of Atlantic University, and like I said, I am very committed to digital economic development. Also, Atlantic has a specific project that I think it's my pet project right now, the Cybersecurity Hub. We'll get to talk about it a little bit more maybe in a bit. Thank you.
Alexandra Fernandez Navarro, Vice President of the Board of Trustees of Atlantic and the former representative of Puerto Rico for broadband at the FCC and NTIA, and former Telecommunications Commissioner.
Ramon Barquin, I am president of the Inter-American Commerce Organization through the OAS and president of Centro Unido de Tallistas outside of my hat at Atlantic University.
Laura. So we have several topics that we want to make sure we folks around the room touch on. But starting with the theme that I think Laura brought up earlier, investing in digital skill sets does require human capital investments, right? And we around the room, I believe we all agree that there is kind of a key intersection point of talking about digital transformation from an infrastructure perspective, but really thinking about the human capital investment that needs to happen in this space. Not only to support business growth, but also thinking about job creation. I want to first start with perhaps Lucy in the room from the trust perspective. Can you speak a little bit about how all these components fit together? And perhaps there's also a policy element here that having government at the table, having third sector, having academia, having the private sector in the room. What are your perspectives or perhaps recommendations just to kick off the conversation around this intersection of building the infrastructure needed for innovation ecosystems to happen in a digital economy and thinking about it in the context of human capital development?
Thank you very much, Lorena. Mira, first of all, I want to express my appreciation for having this essential conversation. I believe Puerto Rico and we are in a tremendous moment of opportunity and transformation, given the exceptional talent that we have here, the robust resources, and the strategic partnership that we have in several sectors. And I believe firmly that we can be a leader or among the leaders in biotechnology, digital health, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and advanced manufacturing. And those are the areas that we are working at the Trust. We are doing, first of all, several things because we have to recognize we cannot do this by ourselves. The first thing is we are extending and expanding our research collaboration with all the universities and institutions in Puerto Rico, but now we are adding partners from outside, people that really have the resources and the infrastructure. I would love to mention that we just visited the University of Central Florida. That is the first institution in simulation, and in particular in simulation and digital health. So we really have that. And now we are establishing also another collaboration with the University of Albany that just established the $75 million center dedicated to artificial intelligence. And the intention of these two initiatives is for us to provide access to all the Puerto Ricans to use those resources that we are lacking. The second one is really growing the technologies, the startup and the entrepreneurship venture. I won't comment on that because I believe we have Hector and Denise here that can really specify some of that detail. And the other one really is to continue the workforce development. I want to mention that there are certain areas specifically in technology that we are focusing on. One of them is the life sciences. As you know, we were designated last year as one of the 31 technology hubs of the United States, and that is in life sciences. Puerto Rico really have a unique position. There was a recent report published by the biotechnology organization, BIO, and we were the only jurisdiction in the United States with competencies in 4 of the 5 areas. So that is one area that we definitely need to be sure that we have the resources. The other thing that I want to mention is the importance of have programs like Phase 1, which is a basic incubation program that provide practical digital tools and strategies for companies to really scale and launch high-impact business. And that, for me, is also very important. I firmly believe we need one like that in two sectors. One of the sectors is aerospace. Although Puerto Rico enjoys a very healthy aerospace on the west side of the island, still a small compare when you look worldwide, what are the clusters? Right now we have about 10,000 employees, direct jobs, indirect jobs related to that. Most of those worldwide systems are over 30,000. And we have the unique opportunity of develop a small business to provide services and goods to that particular sector. The other one is for the silver economy. We need to understand the demographics of Puerto Rico, which really, if you look at the data, I'm sure Lorena can talk to the in detail. We have a significant number of adults, elderly people in Puerto Rico, and there are countries that are doing amazing business developing using that. Just to mention a few, Spain, Japan, Portugal are taking advantage of developing products and services target to that economy. And again, we can do that for the rest of the world. The other thing, and I want to take this opportunity, and we were talking before, is that we need to do digital literacy for adults. That is extremely important. In terms of what are the areas to focus, we really believe firmly that the first one is to really strengthen the digital infrastructure and workforce development, especially providing spaces that people can practice. We recently opened in Ponce what we call the 3D Hexagon Studio. It's a place that we are training teachers, okay, to deal with advanced manufacturing and additive manufacturing. So that is something that we need to do. We need to increase our investment in the capacity building in artificial intelligence, data science, geographical information system, and quantum computer. And these are areas that really are, if we do not make the right investment at the right time, we are going to be left behind. So we need to do that. We also need to expand access to capital, entrepreneurial support, and again, Hector is in a better position and needs to talk about that. And the last one is we need to drive research and innovation for economic growth. I want to mention that there was a recent study, 2022, published in 23, by the National Science Foundation, and there is an index that is called the intensity rate. It's the percentage of the total spending that the island of Puerto Rico do, or the jurisdiction do, in research and development as a percentage of the GDP. Puerto Rico came at the lowest rate with 0.62. Okay, for you to have an idea, the average is about 2. Jurisdictions like New Mexico are at 7.8, and on the global level, Israel is at 4.8. So we really need, to do that. So.
Thank you, Lucy.
Sorry. And Lorena's gonna moderate. At 10:30, we do have to turn to the congressman, so we're gonna stop for a second and continue, but hang tight.
So there's a clear potential opportunity space and narrative that could be created to really position Puerto Rico, not only from a policy perspective, but how these topics connect around infrastructure, workforce development, the human capital. Where is an opportunity space here for having a very informed policy conversation around, how to drive an agenda with players like we have here in the room, Ramon?
I think for starters, we need to establish that the traditional factors of productions, or the elements of production, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, we pretty much need to add what is the knowledge, or the knowledge economy. And when you add knowledge as that additional element of production, you certainly bring about the focus that Puerto Rico needs to have. And you also need to understand which are the assets and the liabilities of Puerto Rico. So my recommendation would be, for starters, to come about and understand which are the assets, in this case, in this conversation, around the tables. And once you understand which are the assets, it's how to bring them together and exercise that leadership in order to bring about forward with a strategy into the digital age. And we tend to think that Puerto Rico is right at the center of the digital economy, but we're not. We're lagging. And as Crespo has mentioned and also experienced in her professional developments and leadership positions, we still need to come about humbly and position ourselves into the future. So my recommendation, again, would be to exercise leadership specifically in the knowledge space.
Isabel, I know you've been working for quite some time and really thinking about the gap that exists in the talent of the future and the workforce of the future. Can you speak a little bit about those efforts and what you learned so far?
We've been working for a program for about 4 years called El Comeback. Its objective is to retain and bring back talent to the island. We're working with around 75 companies on the island, and they keep asking us for a certain talent, and what we realize is that that talent is not necessarily here, but that there's a big disconnect between what our youth is actually studying and what's actually needed in the economy. Not only in terms of the career choices that they're choosing, but also the talent, the skills gap that exists. Parallel to that, last year, the Department of Economic Development and Commerce launched an incredible program, the 21st Century Skills, to train 50,000 people in 21st century skills, and we thought that was an incredible objective, and we think we should keep supporting it. But when we went to our high schools, and we met with 200 high school counselors, which is the number of counselors the Department of Education has, to our surprise, they didn't really know about this goal. They didn't really exactly understand what were the 21st century skills, what were the careers in demand in Puerto Rico. So we are seeing that there's a big disconnect between what we're talking in the private sector, what we're talking in the government, and what the Department of Education, knows what are the needs that the island has. And we keep seeing this in every conference we go, that everyone is working in silos, and I'm glad that this conversation is happening, but we really need to integrate the Department of Education to this kind of conversations. So now at Comprometidos, we pivoted our strategy, and we are designing 2 new programs, one called Futuro con PR, which we launched last year, and many of you participated, where we're gonna be designing a program to bring professionals into the schools to teach skills about skills, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, communication, and also a robust internship program so that students can know and learn what these skills are, among other things, and also act as conveners. We've also seen that there's a big need for organizations to talk to our youth, which is going to be entering the universities and choosing career paths, and there's a big need, a gap of people talking to this population.
Thank you. And I know we're at time, and we have limited time from the rest of your commissioners, so we want to pass on.
Well, first of all, thank you. I know that every politician says I'm very happy to be here, but I am genuinely happy to be here. I might be the first elected official with a work background in the tech industry, specifically at the intersection of tech and public policy. I worked for 4 years at Meta, 2 years at Facebook, 2 years at Meta. And I worked specifically on the intersection of tech and public policy, and I became very familiar with the challenges that we face in many of the areas that have already been discussed here today. I know the challenges that we face in connectivity and how that hurts our most vulnerable populations, how that hurts our opportunities for economic development. I know the challenges we face with digital literacy. We have thousands of elderly, vulnerable people in Puerto Rico who fall for scams and phishing through ATH Móvil, through fake kidnappings, and people I know that you would not suspect tend to fall, and that is a problem of digital literacy. Same with misinformation. I want my office to support this industry, and I like to tell people, we know what we know, and we know what we don't know. And we know to be deferential to the people with expertise, such as the people here in this room. And we want to make our office completely available and willing to help you all in accomplishing the goals of developing the digital industry in Puerto Rico, tech industry in Puerto Rico. So I do have some notes in terms of things that we can work towards, but I'd love to hear more from you all. We can work on strengthening WIOA trainings. We can work on facilitating loans for small and medium businesses. We can work on strengthening our tax incentives. I know that the blockchain industry is here in large measure due to those tax incentives. We are presenting legislation related to the supply chains and bringing back a lot of things from China or Asia that relate to the supply chain, and that affects the biotech industry, chemical industry, air and space industry, and a lot of tech industries in the island. I also believe that we need to reduce the data gap, and I know that that's something the census has been working on. We are not in the same data ecosystem as many in the mainland, and that's something that needs to be solved because that's something that affects public policy towards the island. No, I've seen this happen already in Congress. We get materials for public communications, and they're like, select your state to see how this affects your state. And I click on Puerto Rico, and you get XXXX, because we are not in the same data ecosystem. And that's something that we need to combat. I'm also a defender of diversity initiatives, but not from the ideological standpoint of we need more diversity because it's, no. From a practical standpoint. I'll let partisans debate the ideological aspects of it, but from a practical standpoint, we need Spanish-speaking employees in the federal government to help our people in Puerto Rico. And there are certain challenges that certain communities face that people from those communities are better equipped, again, from a practical standpoint, to help solve and address. I heard some talk about AI. I'm a big believer in AI. I completely agree with the premise that if we fall behind, we will never catch up. This is growing rapidly. I don't think this is a fad. I don't think this is a phase. I think this is like the internet in the early 1990s. And I remember, I was born in 1991. I remember when the internet began. And I remember being able to detect how some people were falling behind by not incorporating the internet into their lives or into their work. And that's something that takes a long, long time to catch up. I even worry myself, now that I'm an adult and I'm very busy, that I will fall behind because I don't have time to keep up with new technologies. But it's important that we integrate it, and it's important that we lead in that integration. In my campaign, and even in my office to a certain extent, we have used AI. We use it responsibly. We use it aware of its shortcomings, but we use it as well because we know the opportunities it presents to make us more efficient and better workers. And I am constantly thinking of ways that we can integrate AI tools into government to make government function more efficiently, to make government employees more efficient as well, right? So for me, these topics are very important. And, you know, I'm aware, and I'm constantly reminding people, we are facing a lot of uncertainty. I know that many in Puerto Rico rely on federal funding for their projects, for their NGOs, for their SMBs. And a lot of these federal funding opportunities are either being frozen, are under review, are under threat. And while the power of the minority party, which I belong to in Congress, is limited, we do have the power to speak up, to tell your stories, and to fight against these cuts, these freezes, and hopefully revert some of them. So I view this gathering today as an opportunity to listen your stories, to listen how these funding freezes affect you, to listen how federal policies can be improved, to improve your businesses, to improve the opportunities in the island so that I can take them back to Congress once this district work week ends and I travel back to DC, and share them with my colleagues and share them with the federal government so that they can tell the impact that these measures have, not just on Puerto Rico, but on the United States in general. So I spoke a little too much. I thank you, and I look forward to listening from all of you.
Thank you, Congressman. So while we have El Comisionado here, it would be great to have some of you sort of highlight some of the activities that you're doing on the island. Does anybody want to hop in first? So maybe Christina, and then we'll have Lauren.
I'm here very humbly. I had the pleasure of coming to the Bee Festival over the summer and just saw an opportunity to create additional opportunity for all of our communities. You mentioned AI and working at Mesa and other organizations. I too come from high tech. I think that I'm not really going to talk about exactly what Black Girls Code does. You know, we start in middle school, which is around when you know that our kids need to start getting interested in technology to stay engaged. I just am more going to use this platform to advise everyone at this table to be thoughtful about what's happening in the AI space. It's not just about not falling behind. It's making sure that we're all included. I think you only have to Google AI and either of our communities and harm, and you can see how dangerous it is for us to not have people working in it, which is why all of the work that we do here is so important to make sure that the girls and boys are getting into technology and staying in technology. It is not the right of one demographic to code our entire future. It should be developed by all of us. And so that is why I'm here. I saw a huge appetite for technology, a huge appetite to make sure that the children are opting in. We've expanded our age range so that we can connect to employability, to make sure that as people come through our programs, we're able to put them into jobs. But there's this big red clock over my head that is, if you pay attention, and this is why I love that you're there, there's not enough of us that even understand what AI means. And what when we talk about AI or ChatGPT. And so I just encourage all of you to become aware and understand that the solution to this problem of not having any of us, especially when you start talking about different language in these spaces, how harmful it is, the answer isn't more technology, it's humans. We need to get more people to understand technology, to get jobs in technology, to be in leadership in technology, and that means it's not just engineers, it's policy, it's marketing, it's the people who give money, it's all of these things. So thank you for your time, thank you for your space, and I look forward to partnering with all of you. I know I've spent some time with some of you before, but that's it, thank you.
Yeah, Christina touched on a very important piece. I think many of you have. What do we do to train the talent, reskill people? But one of the areas that I have personally been focusing on for like the last 8 months is what do we do to attract the corporations that are building out this technology to Puerto Rico? And one of the things where we've had a lot of traction, we work closely with the Treasury and with DDEC for the last 8 months. When I say we, I mean Gulp Data, is that we have actually built out the framework to recognize digital assets like data, which is the foundation of building out AI, as an asset that would bring and attract multinational organizations and companies to Puerto Rico to create their data companies. In the industry, we call them data cos, and actually hire the talent locally to develop the products that would be exported from Puerto Rico. And of course we have precedent because we did this with pharmaceuticals and biotechs. And so just as you use IP and raw materials in biotechs and pharmaceuticals, you do the same thing to build digital technology and AI with data. And so we actually had a lot of success, and I hope that this is good news to some of you who don't know in the room, in making strides and getting the government to recognize an amortization schedule for data assets, which is going to be huge because yes, we need to focus on upskilling, we need to focus on hiring and what can we do to improve the talent pool in Puerto Rico. But somebody who has operated businesses from Puerto Rico for the last 10 years, you also need to attract the companies because they are bringing in the capital and they're bringing in the investment to hire the talent and the upskilled workers. So really excited for this year and looking forward to any of you. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, Congressman.
One thing I forgot to mention and that you reminded me of is we also need to defend remote work and we need to facilitate remote work opportunities in the island. It is important to attract what you come back. It's important to get a lot of people back to the island. And it's something that's under threat right now, not just in the federal government, but in the US corporate world in general. You know, when I worked at Meta, I tried to work remotely from Puerto Rico, but the fact that our legal structure, our tax structure was different, and we didn't have the government proactively reaching out to them to facilitate enabling remote work in the island made it hard. I know there was a law that was passed 1 or 2 years ago to facilitate that, but if there's something you can learn from Puerto Rico's history and the history of Fomento is that companies don't come here on their own. You have to seduce them. You have to let them know. They're not out there searching stuff on Google. And I believe that that's something that our government needs to be more actively engaged in. And I think that the defense of remote work is something that is in Puerto Rico's interest and something that Puerto Rico needs to keep pushing for.
I want to does anybody on this side, Michelle?
Soy muda, exploto. Yeah, so I really want to thank the commissioner's comments on connectivity. I think in order to enable remote work, connectivity needs to be there. Connectivity is not something that happens magically. Infrastructure needs to be there. We need to invest in our telecommunications infrastructure, which is heavily reliant in our reliability of our energy infrastructure. So those two definitely go hand in hand. We have Antonio with us, who's the CIO, who can talk a little bit better about how these two worlds are completely integrated, but they are foundational in order to enable any sort of remote work, any sort of other opportunities that the digital economy can provide us. So to that end, to your question, Commissioner, how can you help in these spaces of there? I think pushing for any sort of legislation where internet is not a luxury, it's a human right, that's going to make the difference. Because if it is considered an essential service, which is not right now, telecommunications as a cellular connectivity is considered an emergency kind of human right, but it's not in it entirely, the internet is not considered a human right. So it should be, because that's going to definitely enable any sort of federal funding to it. The Puerto Rico Broadband Program exists thanks to these initiatives from the Biden-Harris administration, which are definitely under threat right now. And we have Mercedes with us, who represents the BEAD program with the NTIA, and she could talk a little bit about that. But we're leveraging close to $1 billion for this infrastructure, which is, a lot of it is in danger right now, not just federally, but locally as well, because I don't think that there's enough focus on the physical aspects of connectivity and the physical aspects of the digital world, if you will. I don't know if Antonio wants to elaborate on those complexities and how they need to be addressed in order to facilitate everything that we're talking about here.
Ahora sí. Saludos, comisionado, y thank you for the invitation. Well, the Friday before President Trump's inauguration, we received the notification that we were awarded with $10.7 million for the Digital Equity Competitive Grant. Right now, we don't know what's the future of that grant. So the mission of our organization really it's two-sided. Two pillars. First, systemic change in the public education system. We're doing that through collaboration, mentorship, and also through research. And the new part that we are including in our mission right now and in strategic plan is translate the research and the assessment that we do within the schools, translate that to public policy, recommendations for the government. And the other part is that with this grant, we're looking forward to do is that we have a program that is called Camino hacia la Meta. Camino hacia la Meta is focused on reading and math, specifically for elementary school, first grade to sixth grade. And we develop or we prepare all the curriculum digitally. And we were going to use these funds to put this program in a software and make it available to all Puerto Ricans, not only to public schools. And also, we included to develop los centros comunales en municipios like Jayuya, Isabela, Naranjito, Bayamón, Ciales, and put all these programs, technology programs, through reading and math in these centers with tutor in order to help students and also in schools. So if you can help us with these funds, I know that it's going to be very helpful for the development of education here in Puerto Rico.
Yes. Congressman has to run after this, but we're going to continue the conversation. We also have other representatives.
But before I leave, My office is very approachable. I am very approachable. You all know where to find us now. We'd love to hear the stories. We'd love to know exactly how we can help. And we would love to elevate these stories to warn members of Congress, even the administration, about the risks that applying these policies indiscriminately without thinking through their consequences will have, not just in the island, but in the broader nation as well. So I appreciate everyone for your time. I'm sorry that I couldn't stay longer because this is something that I'm truly passionate about, but I look forward to engaging in future partnerships and in working together with all of you to make Puerto Rico a great tech destination, a great place for technology innovation, making it a lot better than it has been in recent years and making it a lot better in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today, Resident Commissioner. We appreciate the time, and we'll certainly make sure that the folks around the room can share their insights moving forward. I know, Antonio, you were about to speak a little bit from your vantage point. I do want to give that opportunity, and I know around the room, we just want to continue this conversation, also thinking about the gaps in funding, the conversation we just had, but what is happening currently with your programs. And I think there's some connection points just within the room that could enable collaborations further to advance our collective agenda. So we want to definitely touch on that.
Yeah, so to that point regarding funding, currently the Puerto Rico Innovation and Technology Service is a subgrantee of the State Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, which is a program focused on basically reinforcing cybersecurity throughout government and also municipalities as well. Now through Act 40 of 2024, we also cover municipalities in terms of cybersecurity. So that grant is awarded by FEMA and CISA, and something that is worrying us is what's going to happen because CISA is going to be restructured. It's going to be moved to the Department of Transportation, which of course, yeah, Cisco Digital and all of that is going to be excited about it, but what's going to happen to the rest of the cybersecurity stack we have in the island? That's something that's very, very worrisome. And to the previous point that Michelle was bringing, regarding the issue of connectivity, that is also a cybersecurity matter. Currently, all the landing stations or all the cables that we have arrive through the north of Puerto Rico, and we don't have any other connection. So in a scenario like Maria, where the cable got disrupted, we don't have any other redundancies. We don't have any other connectivity. So there is an act, and I wanted to bring that to the Commissioner's attention. There is a Diaspora Act that is a project by the Biden administration, which was supposed to enable another fiber optic connection, but it got diverted to the Virgin Islands. Something that I think we are more strategically placed and we should collaborate in that effort is that to bring that cable over to the south of Puerto Rico and over to the Virgin Islands. But I don't see why there should be a challenge to make that stop in Puerto Rico and carry on to the Virgin Islands, and therefore we have more connectivity and redundancy. We can also open up more possibilities to, the Europe or Africa, which also have cables around, and that would, to the Commissioner's point, that would also benefit the nation, because right now we only have the north side of the U.S. connecting to Europe, and if that is disrupted as well, climate is changing, even if Trump doesn't want to acknowledge it, climate is changing, so if that gets disrupted, we're going to lose connectivity as well.
The congressman walked out, but a lot of what we're going to continue to say here, we are going to transmit to his office, and I think it's great that you are specifying different policies that we could be looking at, because we are going to send recommendations to his office, so if you do have anything on that end, just also bring it up.
On the topic of federal funding, I think there are others around the table.
Before you move on, I would like for everybody to share on those findings that you shared with the Commissioner. Are you going to share with all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're going to obviously see everything. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mari Sanchez. I'm the CEO of Grupo Nexos. We are applied research center that houses 200 Puerto Rican behavioral scientists. And for the last 16 years, we started as part of the University of Puerto Rico Medical Science Campus. later moved to Albizu University, and 3 years ago, we became our own nonprofit. We have brought $60 million in the last 16 years in investment to Puerto Rico, and like many of you, I am concerned with what's happening. NIH has a 10-year investment from the Common Fund. Just to give you one example of our projects that I'm concerned about, which is a special appropriation from Congress that historically had been invested in biomedical, and for the first time, it has been invested in social science. And so 25 sites were selected across the United States for this 10-year project, and Grupo Nexos is the site for Puerto Rico. So I'm worried. For the first time, we were gonna have a big investment in eradication of child poverty in the southwest region of Puerto Rico. It's a group that is doing collaborations with universities in the mainland, with diaspora researchers. We're working on a data hub for mental health. So I wanted to bring the issue to the table, like many of you, and see how we can work together to ensure this funding doesn't stop. So thank you so much for the space to bring my concern forth.
Buenos dias. Hi, I'm Angelique Sina. I'm the president and founder of Friends of Puerto Rico, and we're a nonprofit that's been investing in Puerto Rico on economic opportunity. Most of our scope of work lies between working with youth and women, and when it comes to the strengthening the digital economy, we're really concerned with, of course, continuity, that I'm sure most of us on this table are, and our focus is really working with these populations that don't have the access to learn these skills. A lot of them are over the age of 50, and a lot of them are in areas that are not in San Juan. Thank you for the invitation.
I know that a lot of you already know each other or maybe already working together, but it's a new year, there's different political dynamics, obviously there's different uncertainties, so it would be great to hear like if you are thinking about what your priorities for 2025 are in any of these spaces and where there could be potential collaborations.
For us, one is get through the rest of the year. It's been extremely challenging, especially when it comes to federal funds, to get payments from last year, from the current fiscal year, and then in terms of priorities is understanding who should we be serving, because at the end of the day, we are serving those that need, but how will that really look like for the current administration?
Hello, everyone. A little bit about Evolving Space. I see a few familiar faces, but we're basically a nonprofit organization, 501c3 and 1101. We're 2 years in. We organize hackathons and workshops across different universities, UPR, and private institutions. And we kind of cover the whole scope of the technologies that are being discussed. We've worked with renewable projects. We've worked with transportation. In terms of software, we're going to be doing a decentralized finance workshop this Thursday at Mayagüez, and an AI workshop for the UPR faculty on Friday. So we're kind of trying to cover the whole basis. But what we do is we're boots on the ground organization. We work with a lot of students. We have over 50 volunteers that are currently doing tasks that to help us expand our reach and our coverage in terms of the education that we provide, and trying to hone in on specific prospects in terms of startups. We have a couple of interesting concepts and teams that are putting their stuff together. They have been through the parallel programs and have been supported by Colmena and all the wonderful entrepreneurial support organizations here in Puerto Rico. And we're basically open to any sort of support that you are able to provide. If it's education, if you want to do an event, we are looking for more opportunities. At the moment, we have 2 hackathons on agenda, one related to space technologies, mostly GIS. We're collaborating with Arizona State University, going to do a space hack around March 22 to 23. And after that, during that, we're going to be hosting the OS Tech Hack Fest, which is an entrepreneurship competition in collaboration with Bravo Family Foundation. So just so you have an idea of the type of activities that we're doing across the island, but mostly in the West, because there is very little activity in terms of technology development. Aside from, Mayagüez being the top engineering school, but there's not even a blockchain curriculum yet, and I know that's changing. I know the Puerto Rico Blockchain Trade Association is structuring a Web3 course. So I think it's a good year for a lot of positive changes, and yeah, we're looking forward to the contribution that all of us are going to be making in the following months and years.
I want to get, so this side has been kind of quiet, so I don't know if there's anybody, do you, yeah?
I have a question. By like a show of hands, who is working on the policies that are attracting the companies to Puerto Rico? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let me, I didn't want to talk much today, and I'm a Cuban, so I can talk a lot. And I can do it in Spanish or English, either way. Okay, so I'll continue in English. At the Chambers, and I have this hat now, the Inter-American Commerce Organization, which it was created through the OAS in 1991. And we're pushing for policy education specifically because the access on the small and medium-sized businesses space is very limited in terms of communications and information technology. And the potential to leap forward for any jurisdiction in terms of economic development is with communications and information technology. But specifically, it has to do with the masses and the small and medium-sized businesses embracing that CNIT. And the larger leap forward will come from the masses, which specifically is the micro-entrepreneurs. In the case of Puerto Rico, to put some numbers into perspective, we're talking about roughly 200,000 in terms of the micro and small enterprises or businesses. And that's in the official economy. If you talk about the secondary economy, o los ilegales, o los informales, you need to multiply it by 2. So potentially, you're talking about roughly about 400,000 small and micro entrepreneurs. So in terms of Puerto Rico, you can see the potential if they embrace. Of course, the access to technology, to CNIT overall, is very limited. So we've been focusing a lot on educating and developing policies. In the media, I kept on saying timid, because it is government-led investment or government-led economic model rather than a private-led development model. And we need to switch and start leading, and we need to lead from the trenches rather than, anyway, those are my 2 cents.
But the first question that the companies ask them is, do you have the talent? And so I keep seeing that government funds have been going to attract companies to establish on the island, to attract tourists to come to the island with the DMO. But I'm not seeing funding going towards attracting talent, which is what we're trying to do with a comeback. But it's not only about attracting talent, we need public policy to attract our youth because we don't have affordable housing. So we need to talk about what kind of incentives are we gonna provide to the companies that are working in construction, because the construction is too expensive for companies to build affordable housing. So there has to be some kind of subsidize to these companies so that they actually can create these houses that our youth can afford. And also think about tax incentives to retain the talent in the island. So we have to start thinking about those even more. You can bring the companies, but if you don't have the talent, it's not going to work out.
Super. So I wanted to echo something that many of you have mentioned throughout the past hour or so, and it's the word investment. All right, investment comes in all sizes and shapes, and I'm not going to enter into each of them. I'll just probably touch those that actually fall under my day-to-day, which is investment in small businesses that are innovative or are technology-driven. And one of the things that I learned in the hot ecosystems of Boston, San Francisco, New York, maybe North Carolina as well, is that most of the investment doesn't necessarily come from professional investors. You would assume that venture capitalists, private equity investor, hedge funds, and so do crossover investments actually drive or lead allocation of capital into these highly innovative and as such digital businesses in those hotspots. But the reality is that most of that investment is community driven. It's successful entrepreneurs investing in those budding entrepreneurs that are entering the ecosystem. And for Puerto Rico to be able to develop that community, to drive that access to capital, which is the phrase that is being used every single week, day, and dare I say hour in Puerto Rico, we actually need to give them a reason to be. And that is one of the most difficult things to achieve, and I can attest to it. I've been trying to drive that closing of gap for access to capital in Puerto Rico, and it's extremely difficult, even for a niche as it is startup ecosystems. Just to give you a sense, and since we are speaking a lot about data, I'm going to give you some regarding access to capital in Puerto Rico. From 2019 all the way to 2023, would you guess how much was allocated in formal venture capital funds in Puerto Rico? Any idea? So let me give you the data for 2019. So in 2019, based on the OCIF office here in Puerto Rico and their statistics, we had $70 million in venture capital available. That's basically a micro fund in the US. But that's what we had in formal venture capital structure in Puerto Rico. Do you know how much it grew to 2023? It actually decreased by $1.4 million. That tells you the whole story about the venture capital ecosystem in the island, how much capital is available for digital enterprises to bring their innovation, for companies and entrepreneurs that are brilliant minds of the world to come to Puerto Rico and develop their technologies. Unless there's a access to capital component or availability of these funds for them, they won't consider Puerto Rico, and then again, it goes on to hurt all the other things that we have mentioned: workforce development, talent retention. How can you convince a company to move to Puerto Rico if they do not have the capital or the workforce to actually be here and develop? It's extremely difficult. And we have seen it. We're no longer the cheap option for biotech. We're no longer the cheap option for pharmaceuticals. There are other countries that do a better job than us on that. We have now turned to become either highly specialized, or we have great talent and brilliant minds, which we do. The University of Puerto Rico and the whole education ecosystem has done an amazing job producing high talent, specialized in either life sciences or engineering to actually pursue that gap field. Yet, we're still missing the community. And I think this is something that can be worked from within, between all of us. And I know funding uncertainty is an issue right now, but it also teaches us that we can actually move the other way and think about earned income, for example, for our organizations, not necessarily depend on federal funding. There are different initiatives that we can take on, but we still are missing on that community component. And that's exactly what I wanted to bring out of this conversation, that we all have to work together if we want to create that community that drives access to capital, that builds on workforce development, and in the end, thrives enough has to become a reason for people to come to Puerto Rico and develop from within the island.
Thank you for visualizing, both of you. I'm an example of that. I'm a Puerto Rican who's a product of the University of Puerto Rico, went into diaspora for 15 years, and made a totally emotional decision to come back. Recruited by the University of Puerto Rico at the medical science campus, and 16 years later, continue. Now I fund UPR, continue to have a dual appointment, but it's very hard. I pride myself, I employ 200 Puerto Rican produced scientists. And we just went through the Guayacán incubadora and had a conversation with the Department of Economic Development. They have never done late 22 for a nonprofit. So I told them, may I be the first one you have this conversation with, because I pride myself of paying my scientists in the 95% percentile in Puerto Rico. They get paid better than social scientists outside of the University of Puerto Rico system. My scientists are very well paid and they cannot buy homes. And we have done contra viento y marea partnerships with Puerto Ricans in diaspora. I have had some of my scientists have to leave the island because there's no tenure track positions here, yet we found a way to have them be research partners in our projects, and we're submitting grants through those universities, through our universities, but we need help. There are some of us who are doing this in the island, contra viento y marea, but we need support. And so thank you for your comment, and thank you for your comment, and I hope we can work together.
In terms of support, while you pass the microphone, in terms of support, let me not forget, Recovery Innovation Coordinator and Center of Excellence. That's the incubator and accelerator for the nonprofits. I know that many of you are nonprofits.
Yeah, it's very nice to see some familiar faces here. So we've been collaborating and meeting. I think before this table is full of people in tech, right? But if there's no the right infrastructure of broadband or technology, then none of your jobs or your organization could work properly. And that's what our office basically works with, right? We as a Puerto Rico Broadband Program, we have more than $970 million inclined to develop right infrastructure in Puerto Rico and to the unserved and underserved communities around the island, but not only that, also have the right education and collaborations for people to understand how to use it, how to develop and work in the digital industry, also older adults, young people, data literacy programs, multi-purpose centers around Puerto Rico, data literacy, workforce development in this industry, and Wi-Fi spots, which will be deployed now in March, 3 spots per municipality for free Wi-Fi for up to 10 to 20 years in compromise from the ISPs. So we're right now working a lot and collaboration and with some universities also to developing curriculums like Atlantic University so that a lot of newer opportunities are developed here in Puerto Rico, because if we have so many infrastructure, then who's going to give it maintenance and how that's going to be growing, and people around how they're going to learn how to use it. So I think things that have worked for us we're currently, Michelle and I and our team, working with more than 30 projects at the same time, is collaborations between private sector, government organizations, and nonprofit organizations, and most of all communities and education institutions. So we're happy to be here and to collaborate with everybody to get ahead.
So I think this is a fantastic, well, I'll go back to you, Danisha, in a second, but I think this is a fantastic segue to the reflections and kind of the key takeaways from a government perspective. Thank you, Camila, for your framing on like the basic infrastructure that's needed, because many of us operate kind of in the middle level of taking the infrastructure for granted sometimes, but for the communities, and Hector, thank you for bringing back to the need of the communities to be part of this, and the coordination that has to happen at every single level is kind of that last mile, and how to reach that last mile, which is the most challenging. I think right now it's the most impacted. I want to pull from something also, like taking my hat off as moderator, but really talking through the federal government lens. I've been in government for 14 years, and the spaces that provide for this type of collaboration are not as consecutivo. They're not as available as we need them to be. And there's always a need for who's the convener, who's bringing the questions to the table. So I encourage all of you, it doesn't matter if you're in the nonprofit, in the academic space, private sector, or government, to leverage your power of convening to continue these conversations moving forward. The role that academia plays, I think it's critical, but it does take me back, and I think this is where potentially we can look at project-based learning as a mechanism and as a forum for students to be part of the conversation and to bring academia into the forefront in leading the policy agenda and leading the collaboration space. Hector, you mentioned something that I think I've been seeing as a challenge and as a gap, but definitely an opportunity. And it's how to leverage data to change the narrative, to attract that investment. During my work through economic development and kind of looking at data governance and statistical capacity building as a conduit for of being an economic driver, what we saw is Puerto Rico didn't quite have the specific narrative to position Puerto Rico in a competitive advantage because of the lack of data. Because we couldn't really tell a narrative in the workforce development, what are we producing with hard facts, with data, so that investment is de-risked. So that when you bring the companies to Puerto Rico, you can actually tell a story that is compelling, that brings down the barrier to entry. Ease of doing business, we know it's also a challenge, and we know it's a challenge that the DDEC has been working with and Invest Puerto Rico has been working with for a long time. But one of the things that the researchers and the folks that actually manage the data within Invest Puerto Rico told me, it's the hardest selling point is to find the data to position Puerto Rico in a competitive way. And even though we produce the talent and the knowledge base, we really don't have those hard facts to tell the cohesive narrative. But it's also because there is a disconnect, and Isabel, you mentioned this, that everybody operates in silos, and this is like nothing new. Every time I sit at a table, on a round table, we hear, we're in silos, we need to get together, all the sectors need to better work together, but again, it goes back, who has the power of convening to bring those stakeholders to the table? So the data narrative, I think, academia really plays a huge role in connecting these dots and helping to drive that.
So we want to obviously respect everybody's time. I know there's a lot of us that are going to jump in. I'm glad we got to hear one of the sides, obviously, from government and what you're all doing. It would be good before we wrap up to sort of hear how the government of, the folks that are in government are thinking about your priorities for 2025. So just to get a sense of how the groups could maybe engage with all of you. I know the mayor's office also may want to say something. And then we'll do a quick wrap up. So if you want to just... Y Colmena. Okay, great. So we'll pass it really quickly and then we'll close out.
Yes. In terms of our municipal government, we look forward to serve as a facilitator to give visibility to all your nonprofits. So there are a lot of young entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs that knock first on our door to look forward to skills, to educational resources in terms of business development. So please feel free to we are just across the street here in the City Hall, so we could give visibility to all what you have to offer to new entrepreneurs.
To the question of how are these recent changes affecting our work, as we continue to help entrepreneurs and researchers commercialize cutting-edge technologies and research, a lot of which happens in our academia, we're seeing changes in terms of SBIR funding, especially for two of the agencies that historically our researchers qualify for the most, which are NIH and NSF, so we're worried about that. Yes, we do know there's an opportunity to submit competitive proposals for SBIR and STTR to the DoD, which apparently is not gonna get defunded. So we're aware of that. However, there are systemic barriers to achieving that, and it's going to take, a while. But also wanted to highlight there's something that we can do locally, and I think that we can do a lot better job in our academia to work on conflict of interest, to support our researchers and our professors to commercialize those technologies. So that's something that I'd like to hear a lot more conversation happening, both public and private universities on the island. And we're happy to help at the Trust.
So the 2025 main objectives and goals for the Puerto Rico Broadband Program is to continue launching some of the opportunities that we have either through federal funding and through local funding. We have federal funds from the NTIA through the BEAT program, as well as the Digital Equity program, Digital Equity Capacity Program, which currently launched in December for us. So we're gonna be posting those notice of funding availability soon. So we would love for you guys to participate in all of those NOFAs and NOFOs that are coming our way. Participation is key, competition is key. So help us spread the word, because the more we have, the more potential participants we have in these programs, the better. Our programs are designed to impact holistically, so as many NGOs as we can, as many nonprofit organizations as we can. We believe in the power of giving money and cash directly to the people who are going to be using that and leveraging that and bettering their lives with that, especially, again, when we're talking about internet for all. So those are our priorities for the Puerto Rico Broadband Program. If you have any questions or doubts on those NOFAs that are coming up, Camila and I will be here after this reconvening and to give our contacts and answer any questions that you may have.
So priorities for the government right now, yes, we are going to be working on infrastructure. I know the conversation was kind of focused beyond infrastructure, but we have to modernize our infrastructure. We have to modernize our software and also make it secure. So we will continue working on strengthening what's cybersecurity for the government of Puerto Rico, and also resiliency. As Michelle mentioned, we have to work with the power issues we're facing in data centers and different infrastructure facilities in Puerto Rico. And lastly, and I think this is the main goal of every government, we are going to be focusing on interconnecting our databases, eliminating those data standardization challenges that we're facing right now. And this was something that was brought up during the transition. We have multiple databases with different identities for the same citizen. As we go and interconnect them, this is going to be something that we're going to be tackling and also correcting in those databases. And by interconnecting those systems, I don't just mean throughout the government, I also mean with the private sector. Currently, we are establishing a collaboration with banks in Puerto Rico to make citizen data available with the consent of the citizen, obviously, so they can expedite the transactions that we have to conduct on the private sector. As the government, we understand that we have a big responsibility managing the data of everybody. We are the biggest custodian of data of our citizens. So at some point or another, we kind of dictate the pace for the private sector to innovate, because if we don't make that data available, it's harder for them. If we make it available, it's going to be easier for them to progress and innovate. So we're very aware of that. We're working on it. But we have to understand that it's going to take time. We have to modernize our infrastructure. We have to make it secure. We can't just open up to the world and pretend that like nothing's going to happen. And a takeaway I would like to have from this conversation, we talked about community a lot. And I think to some point or another, we have a community. Like somebody mentioned earlier that we've seen each other before, most of us. Yes, that is correct. Mostly thanks to Lucy, which unites us through the trust. But yeah, to some point or another, we've all seen each other before. Parallel 18, Iron Hack. We've been founders of startups. I think we should focus on working with the community we have and start creating actionable items. Like something I would like to have out of this forum is to have a list of actionable items that I can discuss with the different directors and secretaries of the rest of the government and see how we can move forward. I've been talking with Colmena, with Denise, since I'm a trustee of the Puerto Rico Science and Technology Trust. And yes, we have to segregate our data in a way that kind of impulses the development of research and development facilities and manufacturing technology in Puerto Rico. Currently, right now, there is no distinction between a distributor and somebody that's doing R&D and somebody that's manufacturing tech in Puerto Rico. And that is a challenge if we're going to talk about investment. Because if I were an investor, I would invest in something that's done. And I was the founder of a startup. I had to face that question when they said, where has this been done before? I'm bringing in you new technology. I'm actually applying for a patent, and you're asking me where has it been done before? Well, nowhere. That's why it's innovative. So, if I were an investor, I would go for the safe investment, something that's been done before, something that is being distributed, instead of taking the risk, because there is no incentive for me to take that risk. There is nothing I can do that would secure that investment or tell me, okay, I can deduct this in the taxes. So as we work through that data, we manage that data and kind of drive it to tell the story that we want to tell the story that will drive innovation. I think that would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. Just really quickly on my end, I know we're going to get a chance to do a little bit of networking, but we do want to respect people's time. I have sort of two hats, right? Because obviously trying to figure out how to bring this group together, but I'm in DC. And one thing I do want to sort of emphasize is that you all should kind of put on the back pocket a lot of the hearsay or what you think the new administration in DC wants or doesn't want. You have to go talk to them. So if there is an action item that seems really important right now, is that you do take some time to try and go talk to the new administration, to try to go to whomever has been appointed in the new agencies and talk to them, because they're gonna need to be educated regardless of what your assumptions are about what the new government in DC is trying to do or not. So I think that piece feels very relevant, especially to me, because I am part of that ecosystem, and I am telling you that if you show up, there may be things there for you. But if you don't talk to them at all, then they don't know. So, and it's worse. So that's one. The second one, so I am putting together a little bit of a readout of this meeting. I know that there are a lot of folks in this room that, again, are leading different verticals. This is a very big conversation, and it's going to require, obviously, segmenting and really thinking through what are the subgroups. So I know Ramon and Saida are going to talk a little bit about that as well. But if others here also want to, feel very strongly about their position in a particular vertical, take the lead, please, and convene and really think about what those next steps are. And then third, in part of the recommendations that we're going to put together for the congressman will include different policy priorities. So if you do have something you feel strongly about, bring it up. You all have my email. Send it to me so we can make sure it gets included. I do also want to really thank both Ramon and Dr. Jordan. This was kind of like a very last minute, idea, and I'm so appreciative of her team and everybody that jumped in to make this happen and get this beautiful venue and food and all of the things. They were just incredible and patient and so on it, so I really appreciate it.
Let me take very quickly, I don't want to take the lead, but let me suggest a couple of things. Or before that, let's remember that we are part of the U.S. economy, which is the leading economy in the world, regardless what we think. The most innovative, the most dynamic, with an open system that allows for change. That's what makes it strong. We don't need to be lagging. We just need to make ourselves available and incorporate ourselves into whatever is happening nationally. Of course, we can't be laggers. We need to lead. Now, we need to develop a multi-sector and multidisciplinary leadership. And it needs to come to lead from the trenches and push for a private enterprise coordination rather than a government-led coordination. We need to definitely know the assets and liabilities. But most importantly, perhaps the way forward is to leap a trend and just, skip a trend and go to the next one. Because we're always playing catch up. And what we need is to understand where worldwide, the trends are going, and perhaps position ourselves with our assets and liabilities, way forward, so that we are leaders in the next trend rather than the current trend. Anyway, let me make a suggestion. This is a platform. The university is a platform. And we have many different platforms that the family makes available. But this is a platform. Let me suggest that you organize yourselves with the leadership of Laura and Lorena and Dr. Jordan, and that we create, similar to what was called in DC back in the 60s, the Digital Government Institute. And we kind of organize it here with yourselves. And we start leading from the private enterprise. I place my hats and I place the organizations that I lead, to participate but specifically the Centro Unido de Detallistas, which is the oldest and the largest chamber of commerce. And that Inter-American Commerce Organization through the OAS to see how we can position ourselves regionally. And if you take upon that challenge, we can move forward. And I think this is something that definitely Lorena and Laura and Dr. Jordan can lead the way.
I know you're going to close up, but in the spirit of putting action items out there, just to make sure that we continue with the momentum, from my end, there's like two sides of the conversation. One is bringing together academics and all universities in Puerto Rico, bridging the gap of the public system and the UPR and the private institutions to really drive an agenda of data science curriculum in Puerto Rico, which we currently don't have formalized data science programs across all universities. And on the community, nonprofit side, but also impacting very much the building capacity piece. And Nexus is a prime example of this, is La Mesa de Curadores. Organizations that are data users and are heavy on building products, utilizing data to make it more accessible, more transparent, usable, and consumable for policymaking. We want to collaborate and engage in that sense. So at least those are two things that we're going to take from the conversation today and kind of drive that ball forward and bring government into the conversation. Antonio has been a great collaborator with the Census Bureau for his entire tenure. So we're having conversations with government in this space as well. It's the building capacity component, but also how to think about data governance, data strategy, and data standards across the board for that integration to happen. So I take away 3 very specific engagement opportunities. So thank you for giving us a space to do that.
But we do have that, and we also have an AI engineering curriculum. We also do AI training for leaders, for different professionals. And the next event we have is AI for government on April 1st. So we're trying to move fast, and I want to take a lot of time because to be conscious of that. But what we do in Ironhack, we create curriculums based on what the people need. So if the government needs or the companies need Java developers, Salesforce developers, CRM developers, we do that. We work not just with government, we also with companies. We work with Popular and MCS, and we customize curriculum for them. And we can do that for anyone, and we move very fast. Like in less than a month, we can launch curriculums. I just wanted to add that because we do have data scientists, and they're looking for jobs, and I need to place them. And we have more to come, so yeah.
Excellent, thank you. If I may then, do you think we're ready? Anybody else wants to have some input?
Thank you, Mira. It's a very tactical announcement. It had to deal with funding. Okay, obviously these are a very ambiguous time, and one of the big responsibilities as leader of your organization is to ensure your continuity by getting funding, and the best way to do that is by diversifying your funding. So at the trust we have, Candid, it used to be called the Foundation Center. It's a subscription that have the largest database of foundation and private sources, including corporate. That is at your disposal. So we had opened the change. You just have to call Andreika Maldonado and make an appointment, okay? But you will have the opportunity to use that asset, which is very important at this point in time, okay? As I mentioned, it's the largest corporate and foundation database. And also remember that in your earned income, remember federal contracting is not subject, in most of the case, to the grants. It's different topics. So remember, there is a resources on the deck that deal with that. And we also at the Trust have Bárbara Rivera, the director of Phase 1, which has spent about 10 years doing that job. So it's a resource that you can also consult so you can diversify in those 2 directions for your funding.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, everybody. I need to take advantage before we leave, saying thank you to my team, Marilyn, Maritza, Roman, Romero, Excel. They are the ones who made this happen. So thank you so much for all your help. I need to take advantage of the opportunity as well to talk about the Cybersecurity Hub. The Cybersecurity Hub is an idea that basically has received funding from the Department of Economic Development. And the important thing about it is that it has 3 components. Rather than only doing workforce development, we have yet another component, the clinic, where participants from the cybersecurity hub or cybersecurity hub, they're going to be able to practice what they learn in their training in the clinic. And not only that, but participants who are interested in becoming business owners, have their own startups, they're going to have the support of an incubator. So the cybersecurity hub is unique in that sense. It has 3 components, not only training, but also clinical and incubator support. I need to talk about this because I'm evangelizing, and I'm going to invite you all to become part of the working group, Puerto Rico Cybersecurity Working Group, that where we talk about this every month. And I'm going to rely on you to become part of the sectoral partnerships that we're developing to develop more proposals and get more funding for the effort. And then at the end, I want to say it's nice to hear from Antonio that the databases are going to be categorized as part of the transition effort with Governor González Colón. I learned about all the different databases that all the agencies in Puerto Rico have, and it's really concerning because there's a lot more vulnerabilities with more redundancies. So I'm really happy to learn about that. And then I just wanted to close by saying, let's have a chance to celebrate ourselves and applaud ourselves. It has been a great meeting, and I really thank you all for being here.